Welcome to the second annual Inclusion Fusion Disability Ministry Web Summit, presented by PajamaConference.com and Key Ministry. I'm Chris Nelson, and I'm going to be talking to you today about technology and disability ministry. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. So I am the ministry team leader for the special needs ministry called Wings to Fly at Traders Point Christian Church on the northwest side of Indianapolis, Indiana. I am the last all-volunteer run ministry at Traders Point, and love my job there. So I am very excited to say that we are hiring a full-time special needs director at Traders Point that should be hired by the end of the year, which is fantastic. We have some fantastic candidates that have applied. It's going to allow our church to really take disability ministry to the next level. Additionally, we're in the process of a massive build project at Traders Point that's going to include a lot more children's ministry space than what we've ever had. Currently, the special needs ministry at Traders Point focuses on birth up until the middle school age range. Eventually, our longer-term goals are to get cradle-to-grave support for special needs ministry, and having a staff person is the first step in getting that done. I've spent the last 4 years kind of laying a foundation and building this ministry up, and I'm very excited. I feel like I've taken it as far as I can and really need a staff person to get us the rest of the way to a really fantastic ministry. So part of this build-out process, it's very exciting. We're going to be focusing a lot of time and attention on special needs ministry. We're going to have a brand new room. We're going to have an indoor park that's got a substantial amount of focus really placed on special needs, including multiple levels for wheelchairs, some sensory areas. It's an exciting time to be part of disability ministry at Traders Point. Additionally, it's worth pointing out that in my day job, I'm the director of operations for a software company on the northeast side of Indianapolis. So technology and special needs ministries are both things that are very near and dear to my heart, very important to me personally and personal passions of mine. So now let's just jump right in and talk a little bit about our special needs program, how that might, and how using technology has helped us. Some of the greatest breakthroughs I've had have been in using technology in special needs ministry. Worth pointing out as well, one more side note, I do have a son with special needs, and that's what really got me interested in trying to find ways to use technology to help with special needs. I was a single dad for a very long time. I'm fortunate that I'm married to the most wonderful woman I think God has ever placed on this earth. I'm very excited about that. So, technology and special needs ministry. Surprisingly, a lot of people are surprised to learn this about me. I'm not a big fan of immersive technology in special needs ministry. I think that technology needs to be a tool, not the tool. And that's a very important distinction that has to be made. There's tons of opportunity to use everyday technology without breaking the bank. Is an iPad helpful in special needs ministry? Absolutely. Are we going to talk about that today? Of course, right? That'll be towards the end of our discussion here. But there's a lot of other things that you can use that most people completely overlook, don't even include in their special needs budgets, don't include in their in finding opportunities to really reach our kiddos and connect them, build bridges between them and Jesus, which is the reason we're all here. So I want to talk about the primary technology devices that I use on a Sunday morning and in my ministry in general. First of all, we take the same approach as many of the local school systems in our area, and it's called least restrictive environment. All that means is that whenever possible, we place a kiddo in the least restrictive environment. If a kiddo can be mainstreamed, but accommodations need to be made, we will absolutely place a kiddo in a mainstream offering and make those accommodations. Maybe it means placing blinds on windows that have bright sunlight for a kid with light sensitivity. Maybe it means in rooms or situations where there's lots of loud noises, a couple of hundred kids in the same room at a time, there may be some commotion. So making sure that kiddo has a private, quiet area off to the side with some sound dampening. Maybe it means making earphones available or earplugs. Oddly, we have some kids with sensory issues for earphones, but they do fine with in-ear plugs, which is counterintuitive. So we just like to have lots of options available. So the technology that I'm talking about using is used in a variety of situations. And on a given Sunday morning, people like to say that if you're going to follow me around, you better get your running shoes on, because I'll be in all different parts of the building, moving pretty quick. I got to check in on the buddy program, and we do have a special needs room for those kiddos that can't be mainstreamed. Again, that least restrictive environment. So for some kiddos, that means a dedicated room. We've been very fortunate that the church has given us this large space in the children's ministry area, front and center too. And so we've talked about that room, and having that place where we can control the schedule, control the pace. It's very important. So the stuff that I use every Sunday morning, I use an iPhone, an iPad, a TV, DVD combo, and a CD player. If you've got those tools, or even some of those tools, you'd be amazed the bridges that you can build between our kiddos and Jesus. In my church, it's worth pointing out, the only things I've had to supply myself are the iPhone and the iPad. Now, of course, my iPhone, that's attached to my hip all the time. That's one of the perks, I guess, of being a director of operations, is that my phone is on me all the time. The iPad I also chose to supply personally. There are a few ministries in our church where they've purchased iPads, and I think that that's something that we're going to budget for in the future. But for me, it was easier to just bring my own that's completely my personal one, not my company iPad, just purely my iPad. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Everything else I could scrounge up, though, including even the videos that we watch. Our church, we have a church library that has a lot of videos in it, and two themes that have become very popular in our church are VeggieTales, which are incredibly powerful, short animated videos, each one lasting about 30 minutes. Some of them are between 20 and 30 minutes, and they always have a great Bible-based theme. I'm sure many of you have heard of VeggieTales. We use those in kind of a unique way, though. A lot of times we'll start a service with one of those playing in the background while we're doing our pre-activity, which we have parents that drop off as early as 15 minutes early, as late as 20, 30 minutes late into the service. It just depends. So we have to have a very fluid program, but yet a rigid schedule, which can be challenging. So during that pre-opening activity, we'll watch VeggieTales, or maybe have it playing quietly in the background, depending on the mix of kids, the kiddos. If they're able to handle that in the background, that's absolutely what we'll do. And what we found, we have two kiddos that have limited vocabularies. They always have difficulty expressing themselves, especially when it relates to emotion. And so we'll have that playing, and both of those kiddos can quote VeggieTale movies. So when they're having struggles, when they're having trouble, they can always pop off a quick VeggieTales reference that gives us a lot of insight into how they're feeling and things that they need. It also helps them access the lesson. We do teach from a curriculum. We are not a daycare service. If you want to see my blood pressure raised, the fastest way to do that is to talk about us watching your kids while you're in service. That's not what we do. We are a Bible study program where we are helping build bridges between our kiddos and Jesus. So we try to tie those back to our curriculum, cherry pick the videos that are going to do the best job at connecting with the friendship ministry curriculum that we use. And we've had great success doing that. The other video that we use a lot on the side, typically these are not videos that we would watch on a Sunday morning, but when we have other activities with the group, maybe it's family fun nights, maybe it's times when we're having a respite event, and it's supposed to be much more of like a party, we'll watch Shaun the Sheep videos, S-E-A-N, Shaun the Sheep. Fantastic series with actually no words, no spoken words. It's all gestures and noises that the different animals make, and it's a phenomenal series. There are not any quoted scripture references. I would not call it a Bible-based video program, but it's a great tool to help calm kids down at the end of our respite events, which can be a little bit rowdy. It's great to have we'll have some popcorn and fruit and various snacks that are appropriate for the allergy list that we have. And we'll watch one of those Shaun the Sheep videos. They're 15 minutes long, so we'll be able to fit two of those in a lot of times. Helps really cool everyone down, get them calm before we send them home with mom and dad. So very popular. Also, if the kids are able to engage, because it's very easy to access, the kiddos can stay and watch even when mom and dad get there. It gives us plenty of time to do a pass down to let mom and dad see the kiddo enjoying themselves and really engaging with our program. Again, not something I'd necessarily recommend for Sunday morning. Another one, so easy to incorporate into your program is your iPhone or smartphone or any phone that has a camera on it. Our new build, again, there's going to be a heavy focus on special needs, and one of the things we're getting is a much larger room that even has an observation room. We can't wait to get that available to us. But between now and then, we're looking at ways that we can calm parents down when they have a kiddo that has significant separation anxiety, or a kiddo that maybe has a lot of problems transitioning into or out of the room. And so that's the reason we're getting the observation room long term. There are a whole new host of concerns you have to be aware of when you look at an observation room, but we're putting in one-way glass with a sound system that's going to pipe in the sound from the room, so the parents will be able to sit in an adjacent room and watch what's happening in that room, as well as hear what's going on. We're also going to pipe in the service onto a TV that's in that observation room, so that mom and dad can be watching the service. They can stay plugged in if they just feel that need to be close. Maybe there's some other concerns. It's their first Sunday. Maybe they're just there to observe what goes on in the special needs room before they bring their kiddo. But if you're going to do that, you've got a whole host of other concerns like access control. You've got to closely monitor access and safety concerns, of course. Let's assume you've overcome all of those, though. It's a great tool for parents. Imagine if you had a nonverbal kiddo with separation anxiety and difficulty transitioning. The only experience you're going to have with our ministry is you show up, your kiddo has a whole lot of trouble getting into the room, maybe crying, maybe throwing a tantrum. You leave. You come back, the kiddo has the exact same problem again because they're transitioning out of our room. So and if they're nonverbal, it's not like they're going to tell you how their day went when you get them in the car, when you get the emotional situation calmed down. So that's where an observation room becomes very powerful. But what we're doing in the meantime, what we've been doing for the last year, so effective. I have a child information sheet, the CIS form that we give to all new parents. Asks a ton of questions about behavioral issues. Are they able to toilet themselves? What are their feeding habits? Are there any allergies or aggressive behaviors we need to worry about? I feel like I've gone through about 50 revisions of that form. I'm still not quite happy with it, but I'm getting closer. So on that form, one of the first things I ask is for mom and dad's cell phone numbers. We have a typical paging system with all of our kiddos where they get a name tag that has a number, a unique number for that kiddo on it. Mom and dad get a name tag that also has that unique number on it. And we're able to page if we need the parents. A lot of our parents, we have all of their cell phone numbers. We may just text them during a service. So what I've done, after we transition a kiddo in, especially if they've had a tough morning, tough time coming in, I will take a couple of quick videos or pictures of that kiddo plugged in and really engaged, big smile on their face if you can swing it. Of course, that's not always optional, but sometimes just that picture of them interacting with other kids, interacting with some of our mentors or teachers' aides, or even our buddies, take that quick picture, text it to mom and dad. Yes, we are interrupting mom and dad's service time, sometimes 2 or 3 times in a service, especially the first couple of weeks. I might send 2 or even 3 pictures. And it is an interruption, but I got to tell you, I've never had a parent be upset about that, because for them, it's just further confirmation that everything's fine, that they can continue to pay attention to the service and stay engaged, and they don't have to worry about their son or daughter because they're engaged and having a good time, and there's loving people surrounding them that are helping build that bridge for their kiddo to God. So I think that that's very important and something that most people overlook. We have some parents or grandparents that drop off a kiddo that maybe don't have access to a cell phone. No problem. Take the pictures, have them available for mom and dad after the service. We're fortunate that we recently got a printer that has AirPrint enabled, so I can print right from my iPhone or iPad. But even before I had that, I had a couple of key staff members, and I would just email them the photo and tell them to run back to their desk and print the photos for me. So I'd have 2 or 3 photos to hand to grandpa, hand to grandma, or whoever it is that doesn't have a cell phone, so they can see the pictures of those kiddos really engaged, really having a good time. And it helps to build that bridge for the family to help get them plugged in, to know that they're loved, and know that we're meeting their specific need. We understand what it's like to have a kiddo that isn't going to be able to tell you how their day went. Let us help solve that visually. Another thing that I've used the iPad and the iPhone for, both taking videos of kids in different situations. I have found that specific kiddos, when they're having behavioral issues, or even when they're doing things really well, if I can capture that in a 10 to 15 second video, my experience is really you don't want it much longer than that. It can't hold the kiddo's attention. But if you can get 15 seconds or so of a kiddo in the middle of a tantrum during a transition activity, wait till the emotional situation has calmed down. Wait till you're off to the side. Maybe you're in the middle of the next activity. If you can approach that kiddo, play the video back. The number of times I play those videos back and the kiddo laughs, the kiddo really connects with that video, even though it's a behavior that was atrocious. Maybe they were really doing something inappropriate, but being able to watch how they transitioned. The next time they transition, it goes better. Catch a video of that, and every week, all of a sudden, their behavior really starts changing, and they're able to connect with that visual reference far better than they are with any verbal commands or picture schedules, because it's them in the situation. It's been a very powerful tool. Also helps when I've got a couple of videos of a kiddo behaving well to be able to show that or email that to mom and dad. Our church does have a Flickr site, which I think is fantastic. I'd love to be able to make use of it. Right now there's not a special needs component to that. We may end up with a special needs only Flickr channel. I'm kind of leaving that decision to the church staff person that comes on. I think it's a powerful tool, but you have other concerns with that. You're making some of those pictures relatively public, or you're posting them in an online forum. In our case, I do have a model release for every one of our kiddos. That's used to, that was the form that was required for any picture to be taken of a kiddo in our church. The church has recently moved in the last year or so to an opt-out policy. And we have had one or two parents in the past take advantage of that opt-out, which is fine. In our special needs room, it's so easy to control the environment. But in general, most parents are fine with that opt-out. They're fine just staying involved in the program. But I still go ahead and include the model release form in my child information sheet just because it's been there for a long time. I may take that out at some point. I'm not entirely sure yet. So keep those things in mind, that especially before you post those photos online. Even in a secure site, unless it's pictures of one specific kiddo with no volunteers in the picture and no one else in the picture, you have to be really careful with model release and privacy issues. So, now let's talk about the iPad a little bit more in depth. First and foremost, this is kind of an odd thing, but every Sunday I set down my iPad and my iPhone and pray about them and give them to God. I know that sounds a little unusual, but for me, I noticed with my iPad, I was always being so careful with it. Me personally, when I take my iPad home, I keep it away from water. I keep it, I'm extremely cautious with the thing because I spend a lot of money on it, and it's something I use every day at the office, something I use all the time. What that translated to was I was being too cautious with it at church, and in fact, there were times when I could use the iPad, when it could help a kiddo calm down, and I was hesitant to do it because I didn't want the iPad broken. And for me personally, it's made more sense to just give that over to God and be done with it. And it helps remind me every week, this isn't my iPad, it's something I'm using for ministry. I think that might be easier to do if it was purchased by the church, and you have a plan for replacement costs and those kind of things. But even then, I would still say it's important that you have the right attitude about using the technology. I can't think of any other tool that I fret about using on a Sunday morning. So I've made it so that I don't fret about these things anymore. Want to throw out one more piece. When you're looking at buying an iPad or an iPhone, especially if you're going to use them for ministry, I would absolutely buy the Apple replacement package. Used to, if you'd asked me even 6 months ago, I would have said, no way, stay away from the Apple replacement plans. They cost too much, and the replacement costs after you get them are far too much. You're not really getting a warranty, you're just essentially giving Apple a little bit more money. They've made some substantial tweaks based on customer feedback, and I've seen a lot of changes in the program. It's something now that I think is very worthwhile, especially in a high-risk situation like using it for a ministry. So, based on the new Apple replacement plan, I would absolutely tell you, go ahead and pick one of those up if you're at all worried about the replacement of your iPad. One more thing, the IT guy in me, the technologist in me, has to throw this out there. Make sure every Saturday night or Sunday morning you back the iPad up before you start using it for ministry. My kiddos, I can't speak for your kiddos, my kiddos this iPad is not going to make it very long. It's going to get broken eventually. Make sure that it's backed up and ready for your replacement when you get it. So I want to talk about I want to tell a couple of quick stories as we wrap up here, talking about the iPad, that might help illustrate how I use the iPad on a Sunday morning. I have one kiddo named David who has a vast and extensive knowledge of Angry Birds. Is Angry Birds a ministry application that I would ever consider using? No. However, in David's case, it's a great tool. He knows everything there is to know about about Angry Birds. How many birds are at each level, what kind of birds there are. Every time they do a minor release, he can tell you everything about the new birds that have come in. It's phenomenal. We are able to use Angry Birds with him to help explain counting, to help explain numbers of things, to help explain how challenges are overcome in biblical stories, all by using Angry Birds, and he connects with that. I would tell you, if you can get a kiddo to connect, even if it's with Angry Birds, leverage it. I want to tell one other story. One of my biggest breakthroughs that I've ever had in special needs ministry was with a young man that had substantial separation anxiety. His mom also did not have an iPhone or a smartphone where I could text her a picture of him during the service, but every time he would come in, it would take 5 or 6 minutes, and he would calm right down. He did have a lot of aggressive behaviors, though, and when his motor would get running high, he would start really acting out. One day in particular, he'd had horrible separation anxiety when Mom dropped him off. The day had just spiraled downhill. Got him sat down, got him calmed down, and was able to, I do the same kind of thing whenever I approach a kiddo like that. Kind of close my body posture off a little bit, turn sideways so I'm not staring right at him, making eye contact, and sat side by side with him, and was able to say, "Tough day." And he kind of nodded his head, and I just sort of held my iPad up and over so he could see it, and asked if he had any kind of interest in looking at the iPad or using it. And he told me that he loves an iPad app called Fluid 2. Had never heard of it. I said, "Do you want me to get that on here?" He, of course, said yes. Grabbed it back from him, went into the App Store, pulled it down, had no clue what it was, so kind of tried to look at it off to the side, make sure that it was okay, but then handed it back to him. Was surprised. This is a kiddo that has a very limited vocabulary, had not articulated much of anything to me, let alone the specific name of, "I would like to get the Fluid 2 iPad app." I was totally flabbergasted. It's a kind of a Zen program, I guess. It's just a water program with some rocks underneath, and as you touch the screen, you can manipulate the water. It makes some quiet, soothing sounds. He played with that for about 5 minutes, and it was like he was a different kiddo. I asked him if it'd be okay if we took a picture and sent an email to Mom. She did have access to email. He said he loved the idea. In this case, Dad had to stay home that particular Sunday, and I said, "Why don't we email it to Mom and Dad?" I took a picture, dropped it into the iPad email application, and wrote up a quick email to Mom and Dad, and signed it, "Peace of Christ, Chris Nelson." He immediately, I wasn't even really sure he was paying attention. I did it so that he could see it. We weren't looking at each other. We were still kind of looking straight ahead. And he asked me, he said, "What's that?" And I wasn't even sure what he was talking about. I said, "This is email, buddy. I'm going to send him." He said, No. What's Peace of Christ?" I wasn't even really sure that he had excellent grasp on reading. Again, I really learned a lot about him just from this few-minute conversation, and had about a 15-minute conversation with him about what does peace of Christ mean, and how peace comes from Christ. He's the author of peace, and how that's the opposite of that feeling you get when your motor's running high. And it was a fantastic conversation that he listened to me from end to end. And in fact, when he went home, his mother called me twice that week, talking about, just in tears, talking about how her child had never talked about God, never talked about Christ, and when he would start to get upset, he would tell his mom that he wanted to find out how to go get some more of the peace from Christ. He knew that that's where it was coming from, and he wanted more of it. He wanted more of that calm peace from Jesus. And what a fantastic way to connect and really touch a kiddo's life and build that bridge for Jesus. I'll leave you with one final story. We have one kiddo that has the opposite problem. He's got some emotional disabilities, usually comes in very tired, very upset, and often will just come in and lay straight down. A great app that we use for him and a couple of his kiddos that are similar and that need to get their engine revved up a little bit rather than revved down is an application called Granny's Bible Dojo. It's fantastic, and it's kind of a silly app where this grandma comes in with gray hair and a martial arts outfit on, and brings out books of the Bible and the kids on boards, and the kids use their fingers to break the boards, and she talks really funny, and you can get a kiddo to engage with an iPad when you may not be able to get them to engage with you verbally or even physically engage with you. And if you can get them just to get their finger on the screen and start doing it, typically it gets a lot of laughs, it gets the kiddos excited, and has really led to some fantastic getting the kiddo just enough energy to where you can transition into an activity and have a great rest of the day. So there are tons and tons and tons of apps out there and resources available, and a lot of websites that will do a lot better job explaining them than I will. I'm just going to include some links to some of the great ones that I found along the way, and I would encourage you, network. Talk to everybody you can about what iPad apps they're using, because everybody's got one or two that you've never heard of. I rely a lot on Mark II Ministries. Aaron Scheffler is the executive director over there. He has supplied me with a lot of the apps that you're going to see on my list. So get the word out, spread the news, help as many people as you can connect and use technology. Thanks for your time, and it was really great to be with you today. And it's my prayer that this is helpful in some way to you. Have a great day, and peace of Christ.